If you ask the average person to picture the United States Navy, they imagine floating cities, the 100,000-ton Nimitz and Ford-class supercarriers, the Arleigh Burke destroyers packed with 96 vertical launch tubes, ready to unleash a firestorm of Tomahawk missiles. For decades, the U.S. Navy's philosophy was simple: go big, go heavy, and dominate everything. But right now, if you look at what the Pentagon is desperately pouring billions of dollars into, it's not another super destroyer. Instead, they are rushing an entirely new, surprisingly small, and seemingly underarmed ship to the Pacific, the Constellation-class frigate. Let's be brutally honest, on paper, this ship looks like a massive step backward. While the U.S.'s primary peer competitor in the Pacific is churning out massive Type 55 cruisers with 112 missile cells, the Constellation only has 32. It's slower than the ships it replaces. It has a smaller gun. So why on earth is the U.S. Navy betting its future in the Pacific on a ship that looks like it brought a knife to a gunfight? Well, I spent the last week digging through unclassified Navy procurement documents, radar specs, and the latest shifts in maritime doctrine. And let me tell you, if you think the Constellation is just a weak budget cut, you are completely missing the terrifying reality of how the next naval war will actually be fought. Today, we are decoding the Constellation. To understand why the Navy is rushing the Constellation, we first have to talk about one of the biggest multi-billion-dollar blunders in modern military history, the Littoral Combat Ship, or LCS. Back in the early 2000s, the U.S. thought the era of massive fleet battles was over. They thought they'd just be fighting pirates and terrorists near the coast. So, they built the LCS. It was essentially a Ferrari on water. It could do over 40 knots, had a modular design, and looked like a spaceship. But there was a catch: to go that fast. They built it out of aluminum and stripped away the heavy armor and radar. Fast forward to today's Pacific. The U.S. Navy suddenly realized they aren't fighting pirates and speedboats anymore. They are staring down the most advanced anti-ship missile network on the planet. If you put an aluminum LCS in the South China Sea today, it wouldn't last 5 minutes. It has no long-range air defense. It's a multi-billion-dollar sitting duck. The Navy essentially wasted years trying to build a sports car when what they actually needed was a heavily armored pickup truck. That panic, that realization of a lost generation of ships, is why the Constellation exists. The Navy told the shipbuilders, "Stop experimenting. No more sci-fi modular hulls. Take an existing proven hull design, in this case, the Italian Frem class, and Americanize it. We need a real warship, and we need it yesterday." Now let's look at the map, because geography dictates tactics. The Western Pacific is what military strategists call an A-FAAD environment, anti-JAN access area denial. It is a lethal kill zone overlapping with hypersonic anti-JAN ship missiles, land DAN-based bombers, and massive drone swarms. Currently, the backbone of the U.S. Navy is the Arleigh Burke JAN-class destroyer. These ships are absolute monsters. But here is the fatal flaw. A Flight 3 Burke costs about $2.2 billion and carries a crew of over 300 sailors. Now, let's do some terrifying math. A Burke has 96 vertical launch system cells. In a high-DAN conflict, the adversary isn't going to send one expensive missile. They are going to send a wave of 100 cheap kamikaze drones and land attack cruise missiles designed simply to overwhelm the radar. If your $2 billion destroyer has to fire a $2 million SM-2 interceptor missile to shoot down a $200,000 drone, you are already losing the economic war. But worse, even if your destroyer has a 100% kill rate, what happens after it fires its 96th missile? The magazines are empty. It cannot reload at sea. That $2.2 billion supership is now completely defenseless. The Navy realized that putting all their eggs in a few massive, hyper-expensive baskets is suicidal. They need distributed lethality. They need to spread the risk. Losing one Constellation frigate hurts, but it doesn't cripple the fleet like losing a supercarrier or a Flight 3 Burke would. But wait, if it only has 32 cells, doesn't it run out of ammo even faster? That brings us to what is actually hidden inside the hull of this new ship. So, let's address the elephant in the room. The 32 vertical launch cells. Critics look at this and laugh. They say, the Chinese Type 054A has 32 cells, and it is a generation older. How is the Constellation supposed to survive? Because those critics are fundamentally misunderstanding what this ship actually is. They are judging a 2026 battlefield with 1990s metrics. Let's pop the hood. The Constellation is not designed to be a standalone missile truck. It is designed to be a heavily armed floating supercomputer. The US Navy practically ripped out the standard European radar and stuffed this hull with the EASR, the SPY-63 active, electronically scanned array radar. This is the exact same underlying radar technology that is currently going into the $10 billion Ford-class supercarriers. On top of that, it runs Aegis Baseline 10, the most sophisticated combat system software on the planet. But here is the real kicker: power generation. The Constellation produces a massive amount of excess electrical power. Why? Remember that terrifying drone math problem we talked about? Using a $2 million missile to shoot down a $20,000 drone. The Navy knows that you cannot solve that problem with more missiles. You solve it with electricity. The Constellation is designed with the electrical backbone to eventually field directed energy weapons, high-powered lasers, and heavy electronic warfare jammers. You don't need a deep missile magazine if your defensive weapon operates at the speed of light and costs 10 cents per s-hot. Those 32 cells, they aren't meant to win the war. You can quad-pack them with 128 ESM interceptors just to keep the ship alive. Its true weapon is its sensor array. And right here, we arrive at the absolute core of the video. The reason the Constellation makes terrifying sense is because of a radical, highly classified shift in US Navy doctrine called DMO, Distributed Maritime Operations. In the old days, naval combat was simple. A ship had to spot the target with its own radar and then shoot it with its own missile. If you ran out of missiles or your radar was jammed, you were dead. DMO completely shatters that rule. It introduces the ultimate concept. Any sensor, any shooter, connected by a web called NIF-K, Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air. Imagine this real-world scenario. A Constellation frigate is creeping through the shallow, highly contested waters of the first island chain. Suddenly, it turns on that massive SPY-6 radar. Instantly, it spots an incoming enemy strike group. Now, because it's radiating high-powered radar waves, the enemy sees the frigate too, but instead of the frigate firing its own 32 missiles and exposing itself further, it does absolutely nothing. Instead, through highly secure data links, it silently passes that exact weapons, grade targeting data to a Virginia-class nuclear submarine hiding quietly 200 miles away. Or it passes it up to a B-1 Lancer bomber circling way outside the enemy's anti-air range, or back to an Arleigh Burke destroyer staying safely in the rear. The submarine fires a barrage of Tomahawks. The B-1 bomber drops a massive swarm of stealthy LRASM anti-ship missiles. The enemy fleet is decimated, and the frigate never fired a single shot. Do you see it now? The Constellation is the bait, it's the eyes, it is the quarterback of the Pacific. It doesn't need 100 missiles, because the entire United States military is its magazine. So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? The US Navy is actively shifting away from putting all their eggs in one massive $1 basket. They are trading invincible behemoths for a distributed, interconnected web of smaller, highly capable sensor ships. But is it a flawless master plan? Absolutely not. I want to be extremely clear about the catastrophic risk here. This entire strategy, this whole DEDMO concept, relies on one fragile thing: communication, data links, low Earth orbit satellites, and the NIF-K network. If a near-peer adversary manages to aggressively jam those frequencies, execute a massive cyber hack, or literally shoot down the communication satellites, that invisible web is broken. And what happens then? That Constellation frigate is suddenly cut off from its backup, and an isolated 7,000-ton frigate, stuck deep inside the first island chain with only 32 missiles and no friends to call, is going to have a very, very bad day. It is a high-stakes, multi-billion-dollar gamble on the absolute dominance of future network warfare. Will it work when the missiles actually start flying? We might find out sooner than any of us want to. If you found this deep dive helpful and want more hardcore military breakdowns without the fluff, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment on what platform you want me to decode next, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp.